90% of you can't afford the lifestyle that you're living. That's the freaking truth. So stop living like that. Grow up, have some financial discipline, learn how to make sacrifices, learn how to make compromises. Don't spend extra on the truck you wanted to. If you're going to finance something, maybe do a cheaper version, okay? Or try to save up yourself or get a line of credit from the bank yourself and buy it outright so you can pay off the line of credit and own the truck outright or the vehicle that you're looking to purchase. And learn some new skills to increase your income. 9 to 5 pays the bills, 5 to 9 builds the skills.
Welcome, everybody, to the Life Rocket University Virtual Studios. I'm Josh Stetner. I'm here with Michael Sluka and Roman Kanzurski. Today, we're going to touch on a topic that is pretty difficult for some people, especially in a specific younger generation, but it also affects those who are older as well, and that is the topic of inflation. It's something that seems to be not ending and is affecting the way people live, their cost of living, and the cost of the goods that they purchase. Even just simple things as grocery shopping is now something that we really have to be cognizant about when what we're purchasing and how much we're spending. So we want to touch on the topic today, and we'll start first off. I want to touch with Roman because he's the financial guy. Roman, if you could tell us about when you have inflation and the cycle of that, and potentially how long we could be in this kind of a inflationary mess with costs being a lot more than what our salaries are.
Yeah, very, very vast topic to cover for a Monday morning. I love it. And I mean, yeah, absolutely. So the cycles of inflation, I mean, we're kind of going through the darker end of it. So I wouldn't say that we're in the amidst it all anymore. We've experienced it a little bit more in the previous few years in Canada, especially major cities. But a lot of things affect the economy, including things like inflation. A lot of factors that people forget to consider. But some of the major things, and without boring people to death, let's talk about the cycle like you mentioned. So obviously inflation, there's different aspects of the GDP, which when we're looking at supply and demand, sometimes the supply can be really high, sometimes the supply can be really low. And what happens when there's too much money in the economy or too much money going around or borrowing power is very high, it either increases or decreases the supply, aka having a higher demand, meaning more people have money to afford things, the supply goes down. We've kind of seen that in places like Russia over 100 years ago, where they went into a deficit of everything, right? There was a deficit of, there was overfishing, overhunting, back when the ruble in Russia was actually the leading currency and so on and so forth of Eastern Europe. But we've seen that come out in multiple times. And kind of what we experienced here was the fact that with CERB in Canada paying out during COVID, with people continuing to make money from home, not going out to spend money as much on other things, they started, going and spending money on Amazon and things like that. Alcohol expenses went up. Again, without boring people too much, there was basically a higher amount of money and monetary value in society. So they had more money to spend, aka, either the price of goods goes up or down. And now when you're over purchasing something, let's say if there's not enough rubber tires in the world,
or toilet paper,
the cost of that rubber tire or toilet paper will go up, right? Because now people can afford to pay more for it, and there's a lack of it. So that's kind of a general idea. If you really look at inflation, I'm just trying to simplify it without boring people to death, like I said, and make it kind of like a child's version of it. But it's just basically people having more money to be able to afford it. And then obviously as that money goes down, as borrowing power is controlled. So how the governments and the banking systems typically regulate inflation is they regulate borrowing power, which causes people to, have higher expenses due to higher interest. So they increase the interest. Now, this can be a tricky situation, which is kind of what we just went through. Of course, in Canada, it's dying down now. But what we've seen is when inflation raises itself to such a high standard or a high value, the government needs to increase interest rates progressively to a point where it's like a blanket going on the fire. The important thing is you don't want to suffocate it too much. So something like, for example, too drastic of an increase in interest rates can cause inflation to go down too fast, and then that could be an issue that people are broke, kind of like what we saw during the Great Depression. So then there's a massive supply but zero demand because nobody can afford it when a slice of cheese is $200, right?
Mm.
So that's so what they did was they increased those interest rates, which again is technically kind of a good thing. Like a lot of people will argue and say, of course, my mortgage tripled, which sucks. I'm not arguing that. I agree. But at the end of the day, certain homeowners and people who borrow money, their interest rates may be higher because of overnight prime rates and such. But then again, would you rather be paying higher amounts for that or the price of gas costing you $1,000 to fill up? Which is hyperinflation, where everything just gets extremely high in price without the raised interest rates to regulate spending power. So it's kind of a thin ice situation. I think the way the Canadian government responded wasn't horrible. We did catch up, and now we're seeing a significant drop in inflation rates over the last couple months. It's not as high as it was, I believe, last year per quarter. It was at about 6.2% for one of the quarters. Right now, I think we're sitting at about 3, which is a lot less. That's the general inflation rates. Of course, there's also, and the interest rates are said to be coming down as well, right? So they kind of stopped increasing them. They're starting to go down by 2026 and 2027. They should be regulating. But keeping in mind, guys, that, having interest rate of like 5, 6, 7%, that's not normal. So it's not like, oh, this is the new standard. But having an interest rate of like 1.5 or 1.9, that's also not normal. Right? That's also very low. So people are like who locked in a mortgage at a very low rate. So keep in mind that the average is about like 3.5, 4%, and that's kind of where you stabilize in between. Same thing with inflation rates, right? Sometimes they go up and down, and sometimes they increase. I think the average in Canada over the last 10, 20 years is about 2.8 to 3%. The average over the last 2 or 3 decades or so. So that's kind of what we're set to expect. But there's so many other factors that play into it, especially where you live and your lifestyle demands and needs. And for example, in British Columbia and Vancouver, which is the most populated city in British Columbia, a lot of Canadians are actually moving out of Vancouver and moving to Calgary, for instance, because it's the closest major city and it's more affordable. Now, what do you think that does to the Vancouver economy? What do you think that does to the Calgary economy, right? It affects that inflation of the economy in both directions. Why? Because of the unaffordable housing prices in Vancouver. Now, when interest rates go up in Vancouver, it affects them significantly more because the price houses average about 1.7, 1.8 million in Vancouver versus somewhere like Calgary, which could be like 6, 7, $800,000. So the mortgage that you've taken out on a $2 million home that increases by a couple percent is going to be a significant change. Now, that landowner must now increase the rent that he's charging for the tenants, which now makes it a very expensive city to live in, even if you're just trying to rent. Again, so people move to Calgary. Now, for example, let's say there's a shorter supply of tenants in Vancouver, or people constantly looking to get roommates and things like that. That affects the economy and inflation. Same thing with Calgary. Now, all of a sudden, we're seeing, let's say, 5 or 10% of Vancouverites moving to Calgary. All of a sudden, that affects the cost. And then we're seeing the raise of prices in Calgary. Also, in Calgary, it does cost substantially more to heat your house during the winter. So there's those kind of expenses that we need to look into, right? Maybe the electrical and the gas companies are now charging more for that because of inflation versus Vancouver is not, right? The insurance is different in Calgary and Vancouver.
I think that the reason we want to talk about the inflation is also that even though Vancouver is so beautiful and offers so much, it's also very unaffordable because of the inflation and the prices, right? And the affordability there, include especially housing, right? So if you want to get into that market, it's almost impossible unless you've already owned a property and build the equity, right? So I think that, from your point of view, it's, how is the inflation setting up the living standards in there? Because yes, you have this beautiful city, but the people I know, they can't even enjoy it because they have to work, commute, and just since the morning till the evening. They're in at work in the traffic, and then they're just tired to go anywhere else because, they don't even get to enjoy it. And I
Or they
feel
don't have the
like
funds.
they don't have the funds, right? Because they have their mortgages and they stretch themselves so far that they can't afford anything else, right? So I think that there's two sides. If you're making really good income, then it's a beautiful place to be in, and you can have, go to Whistler, travel and explore, and you can have all these options. But I don't think that majority of people that are in Vancouver can do those, because of simple fact is just they're stretched so thin because of especially now the inflation. And one of the things I think that it didn't get any better, and I didn't realize, when sort of 2019 and COVID came in, I was like, oh, the market's gonna go down and it'll be an adjustment, and did the opposite, which I didn't realize. When the government lowers the interest rates to the minimum and puts lots of money in the system, it causes asset inflation. That's why we saw houses going up. We saw cars, people that bought a car in 2019 were able to sell it for more money in 2021, 2022 than they bought it for. And it was why? Because the government printed a lot of money, put it into the system and lowered the interest rates, which you said it created the low supply, everyone could buy and get into the market, and high demand, right? That's why we saw like 20, 30, 40% increase on real estate. Like it was insane in 1 or 2 years. Like I've never seen anything like that where we have 15, 20 buyers on every single properties. But I think now with the increase to cool it off of the inflation, right? We are paying the price for the big party we had over the last, 2, 3 years. And to me, it's like this is all sort of recent, but when you look at the long-term effect of the inflation, which, I would say they're saying it's 2%, but when you just take real estate, I think it's anywhere from 7 to 14% every single year on average, right? Like 5, 7% for sure. Some, if you would take last 5 years, it'll be a lot higher. And to me, it's like you look at the new Gen Xers, or, the new generations, and one of the big topic is that, everyone's saying they're lazy and all of this, but they really have no motivation, because for them, they can, look at the market and like, I'm never going to be able to afford a place in Vancouver, right? Like they just kind of gave up, threw in the towel.
So
So
you guys,
what do you see in, for obviously you're making good money, so it's different for you. But when you look at your friends and peers that are living in Vancouver, how is that like, unless they will inherit something after their parents, I don't think it's easy to get into the market there.
no, 100% not. And like, okay, so there's a lot of things I wanted to touch on there. You guys know I do this for a living, and I talk to people about their financial assessments. And
Yeah.
first of all, with the right financial discipline, you can still get into the market here. Okay, like, okay, what's the minimum down payment that I need for a $400,000 property?
Well, 5%, so 20 G's.
Okay, so if I get a $400,000 property, whether it's an apartment or a townhouse somewhere on the outskirts of Vancouver, and let's say in a couple years it goes up in value, maybe I overpay my mortgage to increase the equity and the capital in there. Within 5 years, I might be able to roll that into something that's double the cost. So let's say 800,000. Okay, using that towards the down payment, increasing my mortgage, trying to stabilize that rate, depending on the markets, of course, depending how much increases and what the interest rates are at that time. And about 5 years from then, I can probably use that $800,000 property to again get into something that's, let's say, a 1
Yeah.
million
And I
ratio.
think, Roman, I think that what I see is that it's so hard, especially for first-time home buyers, because you're paying high rent, right? Especially now because cost of borrowing went up. So the landlords are charging you even more, right? And so now
Oh,
now people are stretched out, and they
here's
can
what,
even they pay the rent, they pay, for food, commute, cars, payment, all of this. And it's very difficult for them to save up that 5%, even though it doesn't seem like it's much. But that's, you're talking about probably a studio one-bedroom apartment for $400,000, right? On
so
the outskirt.
here's the argument, another argument, Michael. Again, I do this for a living. So the first thing I want to say is that it's possible for you to get into the market. It's not impossible. Okay, even if you buy somewhere else, hell, buy in Calgary. Okay, and live in Vancouver, allow that equity to grow, resell, whatever. There's solutions to it. First of all, second of all, the rent is never going to be as much as your mortgage. Okay, Like, just so you guys know, I was looking around the market. My friend wants to move down here from Texas. I was looking around the market. There's a place across the street from here, $2.2 million penthouse. What's the rough mortgage on that with a minimum down payment, Michael?
2.2 million? I don't know, man. I'd have to, it would be like,
All
like 15, 20 grand.
15, 20 grand. You know what the rent is? 5,500. There's
Yeah,
not
but only because that guy has no mortgage on that, right? Like if he would have to make the payments, like he doesn't care. He owns it. He's making money on the equity.
there's not a chance in hell that anything in the local neighborhood is going to be going for more than 6, 7 grand. It doesn't matter if their mortgage is 15 or 20,000. They just can't increase it that much. It's just not possible. Plus, if they have tenants, what's the legal amount they can increase it by? 100, 200 bucks a month? You know what I mean?
2%, yeah.
Yeah, very, very low. So there's not a chance in hell that the rent is going to increase that fast. That's what I'm saying. So, like, my point that I'm trying to make is that not everybody needs to be in the housing market right now, especially Vancouver. I'm looking at my financial needs analysis paperwork in front of me, which I have for about 600 clients. And each person that I meet has a disposable income of roughly anywhere between $500 to $1,000. This is the average Canadian, excluding the high net worth incomes and the business owners, which typically have anywhere between $2,000 to $5,000 of disposable income per month. When you look at the ratio of their expenses for entertainment, hobbies, miscellaneous, and food, it's an astronomical ratio to what they should be spending if they actually wanted to save. So coming back to what I was saying about Vancouver being such a great city, a lot of Canadians, they give up on the dreams of financial discipline because it's hard and it's easier to go bowling and eat out and go and spend money on activities and go travel rather than saving and then paying off their credit card debt with that. So I see this all the time. And if Canadians were a little bit more financially disciplined with their expenses and with the money that they're gifted or granted or even given by their family members or whoever it is, they can absolutely do the right things in financial discipline with those to get to their goals, dreams, and aspirations that they have financially, even if that's to buy property or not. Because look, at the end of the day, as much as rent has increased, the average cost of rent for 1 bedroom to 2 bedroom is anywhere between $2,000 to $3,000 per month. Right, with the average food expenses per person, let's say not even including for a family, let's say 500 to 1,000 tops, including all the other expenses and the cars and everything else. That's about $4 grand a month that we really need to sustain. That's about $48,000 a year of income. Right. So that's not like if you're looking at finding a position or a job that pays you $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year, anywhere between $70,000 to $100,000, which isn't that difficult if you really think about it, right? Like whether it's schooling or you get an entry level position or you whatever it is, even selling cars. I know guys who make 6 figures selling cars, just learning the right skills to be able to apply those in the economy. You can easily sustain those expenses. And that's not even living frugal. That's the average cost. There's places you can find for rent that are substantially less, like $1,500 to $2,000. Because even if that person's mortgage is 5, 6, 7 grand, they're not going to charge you that much. They can't. First of all, because of the market, because everybody else around them is not charging that much. And second of all, because if they have tenants, they can only increase it by a substantial sum or per amount per year. Right. So if you look at all those ratios added up, the thing that Canadians need to start doing more is spending less on leisure activities. Being able to save 10% of your income is not that difficult. If you're making 60 grand a year, 70 grand a year, which is the median wage right now, which is about after taxes, let's say, even if it's 50K, that's only $5,000 a year. That's $400 a month. I can easily look over all my 600 clients and see where they can carve out an additional $400 a month. Maybe 1 or 2% of my clients are very financially disciplined. And I have people who are making 45 to, let's see here, 45 to 50, 60, $70,000 of income who are financially disciplined, who are able to save 2 or 3 grand a month. Now, if they were to rope themselves into a mortgage that they can barely afford with a high interest rate, that would be a devastating blow to their finances, which is why I don't recommend everyone becomes a property owner that's making that much money, even though they can't even qualify for it. So I don't think that right now for the Gen Xers and the Gen Zers, like you were saying, their priority shouldn't be to purchase property right now. Their priority should be to learn the right skills, to make the right income, to start saving consistently. So by the time they're 30 or they're 35, they're not sitting around with zilch in their bank account and zero skills to prove for it. Because right now, like I said, even if you did want to get into the real estate market, that's a different strategy that I can help put together for you guys. as far as like buying and increasing the value every 5 or 10 years, because by the time you're in your 40s, you're going to own a $1.5 million property. And if you have a 25-year amortization rate on that, you're retired and if you make additional mortgage payments with lower interest rates over the 25 years, you're going to have that paid off by the time you're 65 and pass it on to your kids with the increased appreciation value. Plus you get a capital gains exemption. That's a different story. But I'm talking right now, people who are in their 20s, early 20s and heading into their 30s, look around you. There's so many boyish men who haven't hit freaking maturity yet. They're in their 30s and 40s who simply can't save a dime for the life of them. Not because inflation or cost of living is so high. It's because they spend all their time. They spend over $200 at the bar every Friday. They eat out every meal. They have snowboarding hobbies. Look, Vancouver's amazing because there's a lot of free activities. Pick up skateboarding. Okay, you can do that anywhere. Go rollerblading, buy a bicycle. Okay, like learn, like stop. You know how many financial assessments I do that people are spending over $1,000 a month on their truck payments with interest. I'm not even
That's
counting
insane. Yeah,
insurance and gas. We're looking at $2,000 a month, and then that same guy goes online and he complains about the inflation. You got yourself into this mess, buddy. Why don't you save up $5,000 in the year or a little bit more than that and bought yourself an older Ford Ranger, which would have been just as good as your Ford F-150 for the tasks you're using it for, and then complain about the overpaying of your interest rates for your truck. That's a mess they've got themselves into because
once you look at, especially now with the higher interest rates, when you look at how much you're overpaying on car payments and all of this, it's absolutely insane. You almost pay double or more than what you would pay if you would pay in cash. It's insane.
Listen, 90% of you can't afford the lifestyle that you're living. That's the freaking truth. So stop living like that. Grow up, have some financial discipline, learn how to make sacrifices, learn how to make compromises. Don't spend extra on the truck you wanted to. If you're going to finance something, maybe do a cheaper version, okay? Or try to save up yourself or get a line of credit from the bank yourself and buy it outright so you can pay off the line of credit and own the truck outright or the vehicle that you're looking to purchase, and learn some new skills to increase your income. 9 to 5 pays the bills, 5 to 9 builds the skills. You know how many guys I've recruited from the construction industry, from the freaking whatever other industries that I've trained myself. I've taught them the skills of financial discipline, financial training, sales, communication, presentation, and they're able to make an additional income with me of an extra $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month, which drastically changes their lifestyle. Rather than just getting another job that pays you minimum wage, learn some freaking skills that you can apply in the marketplace. I think everybody should have a second job. I think everybody should have a side hustle. I think everybody should get into a side business or sell something online. Everybody should learn how to sell something online.
Yeah, and I think that to add to your point, that those skills now will be so important because really like the rest is going to be replaced by AI, robots, and all of this. But having the sales skills, communication skills, networking skills, of this is going to be huge.
Like doctors will never be replaced. Okay. There's certain careers that won't be replaced by AI, but a Starbucks barista, you guys go to an airport in San Diego or San Francisco, they have a robot barista that pours your coffee for you. It's a lot more entertaining to watch than your average barista at Starbucks. It's very cool. And I really enjoyed it. And that thing is going to be replacing people's jobs all the time. So why don't you learn skills that can't be replaced by AI? What I do as a financial planner is I actually get to know people and I want to be a part of their life for the next 10, 15, 20 years. That's something that cannot be replaced because it's a human relation. Nobody wants to trust a robot with their finances, but a person who's connecting with them, remembers their birthdays, talks to them, takes them out for lunch and has these discussions, that's a job that can't be replaced. Being a realtor and scoping out and looking at the properties and showing them, there's a certain intangible feeling about buying a property. There's a vibe, you know what I mean? There's a vibe. There's like, if somebody dies in the property just because the price is cheaper, you don't want the robot to sell you that. You want a good vibe. You want feng shui. You want it to flow with your lifestyle. That's something that can be replaced. You know what?
Well, and I think just to add to it, I think the biggest, and Josh might add to it as well. It's not really like for lots of people, they're not, looking at the market for the last 10 years and seeing all these up and downs and how to navigate through them, different markets, buyers, sellers market, seeing what's good value, what is not, because they like on average buying a house every 7 years, right? So it's not something we do it every single day. So we're out there looking at houses. We know what's a good value, how to negotiate, how, like, all, as you said, skills, right? That cannot be replaced by AI or robot, because it takes 10 years to build this up. And to give the one advice, it's not, just like you reach into your toolbox, it's like, this is how we should do it. And they're like, okay, let's do it. And I just had one client, and then she had absolute trust. She's actually moving from Vancouver. And she's like, I'll trust you. Just write it the way you think and let me know what I need to do. And it's when you have clients like this, you really appreciate, and then you see that they value what you have to offer. And this is going to become a huge thing with all these changes coming out of the US, with the lawsuit with the National Association of Real Estate Agents, and paying $480 million fine for a conspiracy or something like that. So, I think that's coming. It's going to come to Canada. Lots, that could be another podcast.
You're absolutely right, because if you take a look at, like, let's say if you're so good at your job, you can get to know what a client wants and needs are, the type of person that they are. And when you walk into a house, you already know whether they're going to like it or not. So, versus a robot will just put a list of stuff together, and that client won't have the time to go check out the 100 places that the robot put together. But you, out of those 100 places, pick the top 5 that you think will flow with them and show them that. That's something that can't
And you have to help them with the decision, because there's so much uncertainty now
Yeah.
that people are so worried to make any commitments, decisions, or anything like that. And you need to, hey, I know it's stressful, it's all your money or whatever, right? Like, it's a big investment, but look at the past 10, 20 years. How many houses do you wish you would have bought 10, 15 years ago?
Exactly. And that's why, to come back to our initial conversation that we talked about, I I hate when people move cities or uproot their life just for a job or to be able to afford housing. It doesn't make any sense. Your quality of life is more important. Where are you happy? By the words of Dale Carnegie,
Yep.
and everybody should go read this book right now, you need to stop worrying and start living.
Oh, I love
Make,
that. And
make it work.
Roman, the other thing on this is, as you said, right? Like, it's not, you shouldn't be thinking, oh, are you going to move to New Brunswick or Nova Scotia because the houses are cheap? Your focus should be how I can make more money so I can get what I want here, right? It's the mindset that counts, and where you put the energy is what you're going to get.
That's it, man. Again, by the words of Jim Rohn, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better.
That's the one. And for things to change, you have to change, right? And that's essentially build up your skills and be more valuable to.
That's it. Listen, you want to be able to afford the lifestyle that you have. Okay, well then when you come home after your 9 to 5, you better get to work on your 5 to 9 and start some kind of side hustle and work an online business. But other than that, cut down your expenses. You don't need that $1,400 a month truck. You don't need to eat out twice or 3 times a day. You don't need to be spending $500 on insurance and $500 on gas. Okay. You don't need to be traveling 6 times a year or using your credit card for everything. Be smarter. Start being more disciplined financially, and then the stress will go away. Look, it's either you have the pain of financial stress or you feel the pain of sacrificing some of the things you want to do. Which one's gonna freaking lower your lifespan more? Eh?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
There's, like I said, Vancouver, as expensive as it is, there's a lot of free stuff to do. Hikes, okay, Stanley Park, walking around the park, swimming. We have the ocean, okay. Listen, I had a client come down here from Saskatchewan to show him a good time. You know what I did? We walked around downtown. We walked around Stanley Park. I took him to Fly Over Canada, which is downtown here. It's just a seat
Yeah.
you get into. Costs about $70. $70. Okay, that's how much that costs. Then I took him to the Sea Bus, which costs about $3.60 round trip. Okay, we went to North Vancouver and we ice skated there. There was ice skating there. Okay, so we got a coffee, walked around, enjoyed, and we went to the Capilano Suspension Bridge. Okay, also a very reasonably priced activity. You don't even have to do that. Just going to, and then we came back. We had a hoot of a day. It was amazing. And we spent very little dollars on that activity. So even if you didn't do those things like fly over Canada, walk around downtown. There's some great sightseeing. Watch the planes take off. Take the sea bus to North Vancouver. It costs $4 round trip. Okay. Go have a coffee, walk around. Go to a cheaper restaurant rather than the expensive one. Okay. Or go buy a sandwich at the local shop. Right. Go to a food truck. There's tons of food trucks down there. Okay. Watch some firework events. Go walk around North Vancouver. Drive up to Whistler on a sunny day. It's free, other
Oh,
than
it's
the gas you're paying.
beautiful.
Or grab a bicycle and ride the bike around. Like there's so many free activities here. Same thing with if you're out in Maple Ridge or Coquitlam, go downhill biking. Go do the grouse grind. It's free. Instead of going and spending too much money on food that's getting you fat and out of shape, go do some activities that help you burn calories and stay in shape. Grouse grind, go swimming, go do a hike. The freaking
Oh, the Mount Chief, or what's the Chief in
sheep and
Squamish? Oh, that's my
Squamish, yeah.
favorite.
In Squamish, there's museums all over the place. They're very reasonably priced. You don't have to live a life of luxury. Even as the income that I make, I don't overspend on things like that because I learned how to value the little things in life, the sunny days, the sunsets, the
Yeah, and
ride.
I think that people that, the ones that don't have, what's the saying too, that, the rich people invest the money first and then spend what is left, and the poor people they spend what they have and invest what's left, which is usually nothing, right?
Thanks so much, you guys, on this a very important topic of inflation, and we'll wrap it up there. And but please take our free course at Life Rocket University. If you go to liferocketuniversity.com, you'll see our free course there, and we encourage you to take that. It'll always be free. You can see where you stand in the three main areas of your life: your health, your wealth, and your relationships. All right, that wraps it up from Life Rocket University Studios.
If you're interested in exploring more topics like today's or have suggestions for future discussions, we'd love to hear from you. So please leave a comment below. To find out where you stand in the three core areas of your life, health, wealth, and relationships, take our free assessment at liferocketuniversity.com. We will see you next time at the Life Rocket University Studios.